The movie American Gangster is a very successful reenactment of the life of Frank Lucas, the boss of a drug empire, dominating the American heroin market, which was the largest in Harlem and the United States in the 1960s and 1970s. From a poor, uneducated black man, Frank Lucas rose up and built an empire that was considered a monopoly of Italian mafia groups. Lucas's treasure in the journey to realize his American dream was the heroin of the Golden Triangle hidden in the coffins carrying the bodies of American soldiers who died on the battlefield in Vietnam, which were brought back to the homeland by military planes. Frank Lucas was born in La Grange, North California, on September 9, 1930, to Fred and Mahalie Jones Lucas. Lucas had almost no formal education, and as a boy, he robbed drunk people. At 15, Lucas assaulted a man, stole $400, and fled to New York, where he soon gambled and sold drugs in Harlem. His crimes escalated into armed robberies. Not as handsome, elegant, and calm as the actor who played Denzel Washington on the silver screen, in real life Frank Lucas was a curly-haired, thick-lipped, rugged-looking black man with a belly that grew larger as he got older. The poverty of a black immigrant boy did not help Frank Lucas find a decent opportunity to rise in society through education. Instead, from an early age, Frank had to live with images of violence, in which the victims, as always, were Americans of the same skin color as him. At age 6, he witnessed a 12-year-old cousin being threatened by a police officer with a gun barrel in his mouth, knocking out his front teeth. At the age of 12, Frank accompanied the racist violence of the KKK, Ku Klux Klan gang. Always in his heart was the desire to change his life by making money, a lot of money, to gain power. In 1946, Frank Lucas left the mud of the North Carolina fields to start a career in New York, dreaming of becoming rich like a billionaire but not having the opportunity to be welcomed by high society. He was quickly swept away by the trash in the ghettos in the suburbs of New York. Since 1963, he was hired by Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, a drug lord in Harlem who had just been released from prison, as his personal driver and bodyguard. 5 years later, while his mouth rarely uttered a word, the young black man's eyes and ears were always wide open to record all the tricks and clues in the drug trade on the street. The turning point in Frank Lucas's life took place in 1968, when the boss Bumpy Johnson suddenly died of a heart attack while having dinner in a restaurant. Not accepting to worship two gods, nor wanting to become a drug knight without a master and living on the streets, Frank Lucas gathered all the capital and experience learned from the late boss, determined to build his own drug empire. He dragged all 5 of his younger brothers and a bunch of other relatives from his hometown to New York, forming a large drug retail network in dozens of poor streets in the suburbs of New York, disguised under the cover of laundromats, auto repair garages, grocery stores. He quickly realized that drug cartels, whether Italian mafia or black gangsters, had one thing in common: insatiable greed. They often sought to maximize profits by raising the price of heroin to the maximum, while adulterating it to the minimum. To increase their competitive advantage, Frank decided to do the opposite: sell the highest strength heroin at the lowest possible price. To do so, he had to have an abundant supply, buy from the source, sell from the top, and eliminate the middleman. Thinking and doing, from 1969, he spent time traveling everywhere, going as far as Bangkok, Thailand to buy heroin at the source. When the Vietnam War broke out in the late 1960s and early 1970s, a powerful heroin called Blue Magic flooded into Harlem and Newark from a mysterious connection in Southeast Asia. It destroyed many lives and turned a black gangster named Frank Lucas into one of the most notorious drug lords in America. His regular stop in Bangkok was Jack's American Star Bar, a club frequented by many African-American servicemen. Through Luechi Rulawat, a Thai-Chinese owner of the bar, Frank contacted a Chinese drug lord from Chaozhou, China, nicknamed 007, to order heroin to bring back to America. 007 was originally a Kuomintang officer who fled to Myanmar after the Kuomintang was expelled from mainland China by the Chinese People's Liberation Army in October 1949. After that, this former officer gradually drifted down to northeast Thailand, becoming a heroin lord in the Golden Triangle. The supply of heroin provided by 007 was said to be limitless, but transporting it to the US was too difficult, so for a long time, Frank Lucas only sold in small amounts. The amount of heroin he bought from 007 was just enough for his underlings, who were relatives, managed by 5 agents of the 5 younger brothers, to retail on the streets of New York. Frank's drug career changed completely in 1972. During a trip to Oklahoma, Frank Lucas stopped by Jack's American Star Bar in Stillwell. Unexpectedly, he met his compatriot Leslie Ike Atkinson, the husband of a cousin. Atkinson was a former sergeant, U.S. Army chef, and co-owner of Jack's American Star Bar Bangkok, which, unfortunately, was the bar that Frank often chose as a stop on his trips to buy heroin in Thailand. When Frank asked for help with a visa, Atkinson was eager to help and personally took Frank to the Thai embassy in Washington, D.C. During the conversation along the way, Atkinson bragged to Frank that there is no black American soldier in Vietnam or Thailand that I do not know, and also hinted to the ambitious billionaire that he also had business relationships with heroin trafficking lines in the army. Trusting his brother, Frank raised the issue directly. Atkinson did not hesitate to show off that he had in his hands 28 copies of the type of coffin used to transport the bodies of American soldiers who died in Vietnam back to the country via Bangkok. When Frank proposed a business cooperation, Atkinson immediately nodded. On his first mission, Frank Lucas bought 100 kilograms of heroin from 007 at a price of $4,000 per kilogram. At Jack's American Star Bar, the heroin was divided into small packages, each kilogram being packed into 4 packages. From South Vietnam, the flights carrying the American dead would stop in Bangkok. There, the coffins would be swapped. The copies of the coffins were fitted with 2 bottoms. The heroin was stuffed into the space between the 2 bottoms and sealed with screws. The official orders for transporting the dead soldiers that Atkinson cleverly obtained by bribing the U.S. military officials at Bien Hoa or Tan Son Nhut Air bases ensured that these coffins with heroin hidden under the American dead soldiers would never be opened for inspection. They were transported directly to Fort Bragg Air Base. On the way from the airbase to the cemetery, usually at night, these coffins would have a very short, unplanned transit period at agents arranged by Frank. There, the heroin would be opened, continuing through the system of tentacles to spread out onto the streets of America. Each 250G package, Frank sold to retailers for $25,000 US, or $100,000 US per kilogram, net profit $96,000 US per kilogram. For many years, the flying coffin business of Frank Lucas and Ike Atkinson went very smoothly. Very wisely, Atkinson only ordered coffins to contain the bodies of heavy soldiers and never hid heroin in the coffins of short, light American soldiers. Thanks to that, the coffins gained a little weight, almost never aroused suspicion. On average, each copy coffin concealed 6 to 8 kilograms of heroin, each kilogram of which was broken into 4 packages. Both the number of orders for heroin and the amount of heroin in each shipment continued to increase. So much heroin was flying from Thailand to the U.S. that the U.S. drug cartel's base in Bangkok could not cope with the task of counterfeiting coffins. To be proactive, Ike Atkinson recruited a skilled carpenter named Leon from North Carolina to Bangkok to take charge of making the double-bottom coffins. Leon knew that the copy coffin was to help Atkinson and Lucas transport the contraband, but he had no idea that the goods being transported were heroin. However, the assistant carpenter was still paid very handsomely. In the United States, 99% pure heroin is cut by a standing army of 10 to 12 girls, mixed with 60% of modern medicine, mainly quinine anti-malaria medicine, to turn into a gift with the beautiful name Blue Magic distributed to dealers. Before reaching the addicts, these heroin packages are cut into many small pieces, mixed with modern medicine many times. When it reaches the addicts, it only has a maximum of 10 to 12% pure. Its real price is up to $300,000, even $500,000 US per kilogram. However, that is still a much cheaper price, a much better product than other retail drug products outside the chain supplied by the Lucas brothers. Soon, Blue Magic became a brand name that is extremely popular with both the addict community and street retailers. Even the famous drug retail groups in New York, such as the family of Black Boss Nicky Barnes or the Italian Mafia family of mob boss Dominic Catano, had to cooperate with the Lucas brothers to get the supply of goods. Of course, immediately after receiving the goods, there would be a process of processing, mixing in new drugs so that finally, when it reached the addicts, the pure heroin content in each package would only be about 3%. To protect the reputation of the Blue Magic brand, the Lucas brothers had to carry out a series of brutal purges for both partners and competitors. At the same time, the Lucas family itself had to endure a series of attacks and purges from other gangs to eliminate competitors. Frank Lucas later explained, "To get rich, we had to keep our product prices lower than those of competing dealers. On the other hand, to sell a lot of heroin, we had to ensure the supply of high-purity heroin so that addicts would have a chance to live longer and use more drugs. Other dealers often mixed too much so that addicts died sooner." Blue Magic soon became an irreplaceable brand. It brought Frank Lucas a revenue of no less than $1 million per day. Frank Lucas moved his whole family to New Jersey to settle down. Lucas bought his mother a farm of more than 2,000 acres with over 300 cows as a retirement home. Lucas also built up the foundations of his younger siblings. The tycoon himself also had a number of high-rise buildings for rent as offices in Detroit, a series of expensive apartments in Los Angeles, Miami, New York, and even in Puerto Rico, the homeland of his wife Julie. In addition, Frank also had tens of millions of USD in many banks in the Cayman Islands. To operate the heroin distribution system, Frank Lucas set up his headquarters at 933 Sheffield Street in Teaneck, New Jersey. This was both his main residence and a place for Frank to conveniently monitor the increasingly widespread flow of heroin. From the source provided by Lucas, the Gangster family's Nicky Barnes, Catano established heroin flows that spread throughout New York and North America to Canada. Meanwhile, Lucas, the supplier, also did not ignore the establishment of his own retail system. This system managed at least 44 streets in New York, almost the entire Manhattan area, the entire New Jersey area, and North Carolina state. However, all of his subordinates, from the consignees, the female packers to the street delivery men, were all fellow countrymen with close relatives. Lucas did not trust anyone outside. For him, only family members did not steal, did not sell out, did not greedily damage the brand. Lucas also did not forget to bribe the public authority system. Dozens of luggage storage boxes at the New Jersey Central Station were registered by Lucas. Each box had 2 keys. One key was kept by the Lucas family. The other key was sent to dozens of police or public officials from low to high. Every week, every month, the bribe money that Lucas set would be transferred to the deposit box, waiting for the corrupt to come and collect it themselves, in order to buy the blind eye for the entire drug empire to operate. The boss of a drug empire, dominating the American heroin market, which was the largest in Harlem and the United States in the 1960s and 1970s. In the previous part, we learned about Frank Lucas's extraordinary journey to build a drug empire along with the dominance of the Blue Magic drug. Despite being extremely secretive and taking a series of precautions, his heroin empire still did not escape the eyes of the New Jersey drug enforcement officer named Richie Roberts, a Jewish inspector who was diligent to the point of being stubborn. The Blue Magic brand was noticed by this inspector from the moment it appeared. Roberts himself became famous after turning in an unclaimed briefcase containing $1 million in cash without a receipt that he had recovered from a getaway car. Roberts also realized that, after arresting a series of drug lords and gunning down others, the amount of heroin on the streets had not decreased. That proved that there was a steady and abundant supply of heroin coming into New Jersey, where he was in charge of narcotics. So he decided not to rush to catch the small fish, the street dealers, and follow them to find the big fish, the source of the goods. Frank Lucas's habit of being discreet and cautious was not thoroughly passed on to his wife, Julie, a Puerto Rican beauty. Seduced by her love of luxury, Julie bought her husband Frank Lucas a $15,000 squirrel coat and a $40,000 matching hat, and insisted that her baby, with whom she has 7 children, wear the coat when walking around town with her. While secretly following some Italian Mafia drug dealers in the stands of the historic match between 2 legends Muhammad Ali and Joe Freezer, Richie Roberts was immediately struck by the coat worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This surprised him because the owner of this expensive coat was not a famous millionaire at all. The wife beside him, although very charming, was not a famous silver screen star. Moreover, almost unknown, but in the stands this couple had the best seats, right next to the governor and the congressman. Meanwhile, the famous powerful mafia bosses that he was following had to be satisfied with much more modest seating positions. So who was that unknown millionaire? Expanding his investigation, Richie Roberts realized that Frank Lucas had absolutely no name in the tycoon world, nor was he the owner of any large manufacturing corporation. However, the amount of assets he owned was enormous, not to mention a tangled family network with a huge amount of assets that were completely disproportionate to his origin and the career he was pursuing. So, Frank Lucas was in his sights. For more than 3 years, despite knowing for sure that Frank Lucas was the head of the entire Blue Magic distribution network, Roberts still could not find any evidence to handcuff the boss. Moreover, his investigation was often hindered from many levels. Even in the anti-drug department, many levels were not satisfied with his investigation. Meanwhile, Roberts's baiting attempts always failed, because the clever Frank Lucas always had enough alibi evidence. Lucas also knew Roberts's face. Both knew who the other was and what he was planning to do to him. The final battle. In early January 1975, after the Battle of Phuc Long, the media updated the prediction of the complete collapse of the US-sponsored South Vietnamese government not every day but every hour. Although he knew he was being netted, Frank Lucas, for fear of losing the opportunity, still took the risk of going straight to Thailand with the determination to take a big shipment before permanently closing the flying coffin deals. All the establishments that Boss 007 and the bar owner Rulawat could contact had to work hard to collect all the heroin in the Golden Triangle and hand it over to Frank Lucas, ignoring the advice that leave before it's too late. Leaving doesn't mean running away. Lucas still firmly shook his head and went into the Golden Triangle himself to supervise the collection of enough quantity for the huge order: 2,000 kilograms of heroin. Greed is contagious. Before he could finish arranging the transportation of heroin in the contract with Lucas, Atkinson decided to make a big deal for himself. His shipment worth $3 million would not be loaded into the coffin but would be put in the luggage of the dead soldiers sent back to their families. When Frank Lucas had just disappeared from the US, Richie Roberts immediately discovered that he had arrested a younger brother, a relative, and also a trusted agent of Lucas. Both threatening and persuading, Roberts forced his underling to reveal Frank Lucas's purpose and plan to rush to Thailand. All movements, and phone calls of both Atkinson and Frank Lucas were closely monitored. Thanks to that, Roberts got the flight number that would bring heroin from Thailand to Fort Bragg, disguised as the license plate number in the phone calls. Roberts' campaign almost failed miserably, threatening to destroy his entire anti-drug career. The drug problem in the US military had been alarming for a long time, and had been continuously exposed and criticized by the press. From the beginning, the US military did not believe it, nor did they want to admit that the military was involved in international drug smuggling. The order to search the coffins right at the military base that Roberts presented was strongly opposed by military officials, with the very humane reason that no one had the right to pry open the coffin, insulting the soldiers who had died. Unfortunately for Roberts, with all his conviction and determination, he won the right to execute the search warrant, but even after prying open the coffins, there were only dead bodies but not a single gram of heroin. Due to the large quantity, while each double-bottomed coffin could only contain a negligible amount of heroin, Atkinson decided to take a risk and not use the double-bottomed coffins but real coffins. There would be no dead bodies in the coffins, only heroin. The shipping plan was changed at the last minute, so Richie Roberts could not find any evidence. His investigation file was in danger of being closed unconditionally. Atkinson and Lucas's change of plans accidentally eliminated Roberts, but then his greed accidentally helped him. Atkinson's private shipment was packed in 2 bags with the recipient's address as 2 middle-aged black women in Lafayette Village, North Carolina. In his haste, Atkinson misdirected one of the bags. The woman who received the package did not even bother to open it to see that it was a mistake. The package was not hers. Moreover, suspecting that the package was a bomb bag, she handed it over to the police. Discovering heroin, they were handed over to the anti-narcotics department. Without much difficulty, the experts found Atkinson's fingerprints on this package, and the second package was later tracked down and seized. On January 19, 1975, Leslie Ike Atkinson was arrested. Richie Roberts also regained the investigative authority that had been thought to be taken away. Completely unlike on screen, there were no gunfights or deaths during the simultaneous searches of Frank Lucas's facilities. However, in reality, 2,000 kilograms of heroin, not even broken up and packaged, was seized without missing a gram. Robert's next move was to go with his associates straight to the church where Frank Lucas and his family were attending and take him straight to federal prison without encountering any resistance. A 70-year sentence was handed down, and to mitigate his sentence, Frank Lucas agreed to cooperate with the law, represented by his longtime rival Richard "Richie" Roberts. He revealed a series of corrupt cops who had been paid to turn a blind eye to his drug empire. 52 of the 70 New Jersey narcotics officers were arrested and prosecuted. His testimony led to the seizure of a large amount of drug-related assets. His Cayman Islands bank accounts were also seized 4 times, totaling $52 million. Lucas's cooperation helped reduce his sentence to 15 years in prison and put him in the Federal Witness Protection Program. In 1981, he was released. Old habits made him attractive again. In 1984, he was caught red-handed transporting 13 kilograms of cocaine and was sent to prison again. After paying the price for another 7 years, in 1991, Frank Lucas was released. After the Frank Lucas case ended, Richie Roberts continued to serve in the anti-drug force for another 7 years, then switched to law. His first client was none other than Frank Lucas. Thanks to his eloquence, Roberts proved the importance of Frank Lucas's cooperation in drug eradication, helping his client reduce his sentence from 70 years to 15 years and enjoy witness protection. During Frank's time in prison, Richie also helped and provided money to raise his client's son, Raymond Lucas, until he became a talented hip-hop artist. When Frank was released from prison, Roberts went to pick him up. Currently, the two former rivals still consider each other as two close friends. The life of Frank Lucas became the inspiration for the famous movie American Gangsters, in which the Black American actor Daniel Washington played the drug lord Lucas, who advised Washington on how to act, although he later admitted that the film script had many creative points compared to his real story. However, the end of the Blue Magic Empire was not the end, but only the intersection between the two empires. Right at the time when Lucas was serving his sentence, the drug empire changed its focus from the Golden Triangle in Myanmar to the Golden Crescent in Afghanistan with new bosses such as the Mujahideen, Pablo Escobar, and many other names, and a new cycle began. On May 30th, 2018, Frank Lucas breathed his last at home in the arms of his family. The ending of Frank Lucas can be considered quite gentle compared to what he had caused.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. And as always, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one.